When you eat a meal, eat some carbohydrates, you stimulate insulin release. Insulin inhibits lipolysis, and actin turns on lipogenesis. That's the opposite of growth hormone. The elevation in glucose is also going to suppress growth hormone release. So that's just normal endogenous regulation. It doesn't make any sense to release a hormone that is counter to another hormone at the same time. Insulin is a storage hormone. And in this sense, just put it simply, growth hormone does the opposite.
Hey, what's up, guys? On this episode of Muscle Minds, Dr. Scott and I take listener questions. We start out talking about walking lunges and taking them to failure. Then we discuss bands and can you use bands alone to maintain your strength? Then our big topic of the day is the effect of carbohydrates on growth hormone. After that, we have a newer guy who asks what the safest cycle would be. And finally, we discuss both niacin and milk thistle. All of this and much more right now here on Muscle Minds. What's up, guys? Welcome back to Muscle Minds with Dr. Scott Stevenson. Our programming is brought to you by TrueNutrition.com, as well as GetAzoth.com and new affiliate Supplement Needs. You can find links and codes in our descriptions wherever you're finding the show right now. We've got a bunch of stuff here today. I think we're going to start with lunges. We had one of our longtime Facebook followers. He's from the UK. He just competed in do they call it I don't think they call it Masters Nationals. It was like the British. What's the British national? The big British show. What's that show that they do every year?
I think we just call it the Brits.
Is it? Yeah.
British Nationals.
Okay.
Yeah.
But he had a goal of getting top 5 there, which he did.
PCA at the PCA or
I don't know. Whatever the big national show is. Yeah.
Yeah, they're changing. I think PCA is becoming bigger and bigger there now, but it's been in flux as of late.
Okay. So Gazzy John, he has a question here. He says, so anybody who watched Blood, Sweat, and Gear, this ties in. We discussed the topic squats versus leg press. And from here, he says, walking lunges, where is it best to put them in your leg workout? And are they to be used to failure, or can they still be used to benefit if stopped short? It's just one of those moves I love, but I'm never sure where best to put it or how to use it. I don't think I have ever seen anyone go to complete failure on them like they have with other exercises. And now this ties in to our episode with with Skip on Blood, Sweat, and Gear, because he had said squats, you're more likely to fail in your lungs. You know, you're more likely to get winded before your legs are going to fail. And he kind of said
lunges or squats?
With squats. And
Gazzy
John here said that he kind of feels the same way with his lunges. He said that he feels like his lungs are burning and he's winded that happens to him first before the muscle actually fails.
Right.
Yeah.
So yeah, he had kind of a long spiel there. So the first thing is what this is. I'm trying not to sound. Someone failed on walking lunges where they literally fall on the ground. Like if you fail, then
that's a good point.
Fucked. Like let's see if we can tear a ligament. At least one, maybe two.
Yeah.
Let's get the ACL, maybe the MCL, or maybe it's just a PCL. Depends on how you do this. So what do you do with the other leg after you fail on the one? Like you literally have fallen down.
Yeah.
So you can't, and you're also, if you fail on one leg, like you can't fail on the other leg because you just can't get up anymore.
Yeah.
If you're walking. So there's just kind of a practical reason.
That makes sense.
I've got some, I just literally, it's funny that he's asked this because I just did Romanian split squats a couple days ago in the gym.
Okay.
But those are not walking lunges, but I did those as a rest pause, like a DC style rest pause, and I go to failure. But when I go to failure, I just literally, I get to the bottom of the rep and I just, I'm at the ground, I just let go. This is on a really cool, it's actually Erin Stern's machine that she's left at one of the powerhouse gyms here in town.
No kidding.
So it's it's a unilateral machine, and you load the two lever arms. The handles can be adjusted angularly or raise it up and down. So I just put it all the way at the bottom It makes for a really good range of motion.
Yeah.
So you could, I had 100 pounds on each side. So, whatever that would be, probably a little more than 200, maybe 225 pounds total, something like that. So it's pretty good for one leg.
Okay.
And when I'm done, I fail. That's it. I just let go and I stand up because I've got enough left to stand up.
Yeah.
Once I've dropped the weight, now I've just got, my body weight left. So I can get up, and then I got back in a squat position. I stood back up with it and went with the other leg and went to failure there. And then there's sometimes I've just literally stopped and kind of fallen down, but I've got the weight in my hands.
Okay.
So I can do that. If you're thinking about walking lunges with the barbell like Ronnie used to do, yeah, I mean, he never went to failure. He just eventually got where it was not safe anymore, and then he just dropped the weight.
Yeah, like a badass.
Yeah, he was.
Boom, just bailed on it.
Right. Yeah, they treated those weights at the gym there with such kind care.
Yeah.
At Metroflex.
Yeah.
So that didn't matter. But you're not going to go to failure on walking lunges.
Yeah.
So the other thing, what I have to say, but the thing is, you can use them, just using progressive overload, and you're just stopping, a rep or two shy of getting dangerous. So you go to the same sort of reps in reserve.
Yeah.
Let's say it's your distance or the number of steps. And then, you try to get further into that with, being at least mindful of the fact that if you do fail, you're pretty much screwed unless you have an easy way to drop it. If you got dumbbells, it's much easier, or kettlebells, sure. But if you progress from 50-pound dumbbells to 60 to 70 to 80 to 90, etc., you still got progressive overload. So you don't have to go to failure in order to progressive overload. And like a lot of people don't really go to failure anyway.
Yeah.
Almost anything they do. I mean, and that's just kind of the truth of the matter. Failure is true. Momentary muscular failure is a pretty rare thing to see in gyms.
Yeah.
If you really think about it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like you see that and you're like that person's like a grinder, like a true, we've talked about this before, a true momentary muscular failure point where it's the muscle, not the nervous system or the psyche, or you just decide like I need to bail because it's not safe anymore, means that the rep speed is going to slow down, and you have you'll very likely have a grinder rep where like it's just slowing to a complete stop and then boom, you're done. So that's just how that's what it looks like when you look at fatigue curves with muscle when you're doing tests like that where people can just keep on pushing. Like on a dynamometer where they set the speed and you're doing like a knee extension, it goes up and down, up, and you just have people push as hard as they can. You watch the force, there's just kind of an exponential decay.
Yeah.
So you see the same sort of thing in rep speed near the end of a set. Obviously you don't start the set going as fast as you can at the beginning, but eventually, and there've been some studies now looking into like bar velocity or movement velocity as a surrogate way of auto-regulating the effort. So instead of using your subjective perception of reps in reserve, you could actually, if you've got the equipment, you could measure, and it's actually becoming available now. There's a guy named Lee Bell who's done a little bit of this work. He's very interested in this. He's in the UK. He was part of the group TRA Performance with Paul. I'm blanking on, I want to say Paul Scarborough, but blanking on Paul's last name. But those two are the guys who put me up over in Scotland when I did my talk last year.
Okay.
Paul Rimmer. And so Lee's looked into this a good bit. It's sort of one of its areas.
So measuring how much it slows down.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Then you can. Yeah. Okay. That makes sense.
And you've seen this, like when someone's like, like it's like, okay, come on, go, keep going.
Yeah, of course.
Is like, then eventually it comes to a stop. You know that they didn't just. But when you see people like the first rep looks just about like the last rep.
Yeah.
Okay, you have some left there. Obviously, there was no struggle at the end.
Right.
So you could come to the same reps in reserve, or to the point where you feel like, now I'm no longer like standing up as I'm doing these walking lunges in a way that's safe.
Yeah.
And if the load goes up, or you just add more steps, let's say you start with 10 steps aside, and then you work to 12 and 15, and you increase the load, you're back to 10, blah blah blah. You can progressively overload just in the same way. You're just not going to failure.
Yeah.
I think that was part of his question, was whether you can get something out of those.
Yeah. And does he need to go to complete failure? I guess that was, part of it. And it sounds like you're telling us that no. And now that you mention it, I mean, it does seem so logical. Yeah, I guess what does failure mean? Falling over on on a lunge?
Right.
Yeah, I hadn't thought of that.
Just getting crushed. But I mean, it literally could mean, that you take that step and literally you can't stand up. But what he's talking about is that people they'll gas out first, so to speak, before they'll have muscular failure. And this is the thing, people ask me about this in the context of fortitude training a good bit, because one of the general rules there is that the reps would be continuous, so that you don't have those discontinuous sets like a Widowmaker, where you're accumulating those we talked about this a couple podcasts ago, I think, where you're accumulating those really tough reps that are just like destroy your nervous system, because it's just an all-out, stay under the bar as long as you can, get a couple reps, wait, get another rep, wait. And those reps are all very, very close to failure.
Yeah.
If you keep the set continuous, then you avoid that. You can still go to a failure point, and what's happening there is you're not allowing the recovery between reps that then allows you to get those extra reps.
Yeah.
Instead, if you're maintaining tension, you're maintaining metabolic stress because you're disallowing blood flow to clear away those metabolites.
Yeah.
As long as you got the contraction going, like was Joe Weider's continuous tension principle or something like that. And there's something to say for that. So here's the thing that's interesting about walking lunges versus just doing them like one leg at a time, like in a Smith machine or with a barbell in a rack, is that so you're releasing the metabolic stress when you go from one leg to the other. So it's literally be like doing a leg press where you do a rep, you go down and do a rep, and then you rest.
Yeah.
Go down and do a rep and you rest. You're going to get more reps that way.
Sure.
Of course.
Sure.
And the thing is, though, when you're walking during lunging, there's no unlike a leg press where you're actually not doing anything during those periods. When one leg is resting and the other one is lifting.
Yeah.
So you've got metabolic stress being released in one leg while the other leg's working, and vice versa. You go back and forth, but you've got continuous energy demand. So what this means is that muscularly you can recover in one leg versus the other, but you've got all this energy demand because you're doing deep lunges with the weight on your back or in your hands.
Yeah.
And that then shifts the locus of fatigue, the thing that keeps you from keeping on going, to your cardiovascular system. So that's really the phenomenon in general of gassing out, is that your cardiovascular system becomes the limiter.
Yeah.
And like kind of an interesting side point, it was like back in the 60s, I think. They used to do, and they still do, they're doing a lot more than this now in the resistance training arena, but like the Scandinavians especially were known, people like Pertesh and Bengt Saltine, who I'm going to talk about here. A lot of the guys over there, they did a lot of awesome research, phenomenal researchers there. The Karolinska Institute in Sweden was where a lot of that happened. And Bengt Saltine, they figured out that if you look at when they do like a isolated like knee extension, like one leg at a time, they look at max blood flow relative to the amount of muscle that's engaged. You can compare that to when someone's doing like running and they go all the way to VO2 max. They're at their cardiovascular power maximal output. Their VO2 can't go any higher. They can't do any more. Or you do this on a cycloergometer is where they typically would do it. But you look at blood flow at VO2 max, and it's only about 1/3 of what the muscle can actually handle when you compare it to like that unilateral leg exercise. So if you just got the quad and you're not using the glutes or the hamstrings or the calves, or you're not running, your arms aren't engaged, your cardiovascular system can deliver a lot of blood. It's only got a small amount of muscle to send that to. Yeah. So the muscle can handle a lot of blood flow when it's just a small amount of muscle. But then when you add both legs, the hamstrings, the glutes, you're actually running now.
Yeah.
That cardiovascular capacity has to be delivered to all those other muscles in the body, in the legs, in this case if you're running, your arms.
Yeah.
even if you're cycling, you're still supporting yourself. So then you have a cardiovascular limitation.
I see. Yeah, that makes sense. That makes sense. Why I get short on breath squatting, real quick compared to another exercise. Yeah.
Yeah, and there's something to say. This is one rationale for doing some kind of cardio for some people, because then you strengthen the cardiovascular system. At least, relatively speaking, your RPE during squats isn't going to be as high.
Yeah.
So you're going to be less likely, if you are giving out for psychological reasons, you're going to get more reps because it's not going to seem as hard.
Yeah.
Because you're more cardiovascularly fit. So the extent to which that's the limiter becomes less, and you can maybe get more reps.
I've gone through phases training, my Tom Platz phases, where I'm like, I'm going to do 30 reps on all my squats,
Right.
And like, I'm just going to take this weight and I'm going to keep getting more. I'm going to keep getting more. And I'll work up. I've worked up in the past to 25, 30 reps with a weight that I initially could only do like 12 with, and it's brutal. But then when I've gotten there, then I'm like, all right, now I'm going to switch to heavier. A lot of times what I've done is, in the past I would do that, and then the next time I would do heavier, and then the next time I do higher up, the next time I do heavier. But I found doing that more often, I had conditioned my cardio system so that when I did do heavier, I could get a lot closer to failing in the weight. My lungs felt fine. I get to 10 reps and it's my legs that are now failing. The cardio system's still fine,
That's exactly what I see happens with plug fortitude training.
Okay, yeah.
Because you're doing those pump sets, those high rep sets.
Oh, yeah.
That are 20 to 30, and then the heavier sets are less likely to be limited by gassing out because you've done that. But then you've done those, you're getting stronger on those heavier sets, and then when you go to the lighter stuff, it's like, oh, this feels light.
Yeah.
Relatively speaking. So like those two, like, they play off one another. You develop muscle endurance and cardiovascular capacity with those higher rep sets.
I think that's part of what I'm lacking right now. If we talk about that later, I'll bring that up. But yeah, I think I'm getting some flags are going off right now in my head, or waving.
Right. Yeah, let's keep that. So, but back to the lunging. The thing is that you're using like you're supporting the weight and with your upper body, and that actually is going to require some energy output because you're using a substantial amount of weight. I mean, I don't know if people would do lunges with like 100-pound dumbbells in their hands. People obviously do, or Romanian split squats, but that's just holding that there. That's like picking up like almost 2 1/4 and just holding it there.
Gazzy John would do that. He's a hardcore guy. I know he is. He's old school. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Those are brutal. They're very hard. But like with the walking lunges, though, now you're shifting. You've got continuous energy output, so the cardiovascular system is engaged, and you're letting the muscle rest between reps. So as you keep on going, and this was his observation, is you do one leg after the other, the legs are recovering, but as the other leg's working to some degree, you're still kind of walking, but your cardiovascular system is still going, and it's supporting the energy demand, at least in terms of oxygen supply and blood flow, et cetera, of both legs. So eventually that becomes an issue, and you can end up gassing out before the muscles reach failure.
Okay.
But if you do like a lunge with one leg at a time, you're not resting between those reps.
Yeah.
So now you've got the metabolic stress that accumulates as long as you maintain tension.
Yeah.
And you're going to be able to go to failure where the failure is a function of the muscle fatigue, not the cardiovascular system so much. So that's what I found. That's why I prefer to do them that way. Like, a lot of gyms don't want you outside walking around lunging.
Yeah.
Or you could do it, I guess, to walk through the gym and be, that person that has to watch out for.
Yeah. But Novi Powerhouse has like a straight track area, so you can, like with 5 lanes. So people are, doing stuff up and down those all sorts of weird CrossFit-y type things that I would never do. But yeah, that makes sense. So in a stable place, like in a a standing lunge, then or in a Smith or whatever.
Yeah, I mean that's kind of the whole trick is like, I mean, if you like imagine like just take this like another step. Like some people aren't doing like clean and jerks.
Yeah.
For muscle growth, like you're not doing like trying to do clean and jerk for sets of 12 to 15.
Yeah.
That's like kind of a whole body exercise, but you can end up gassing out pretty fast on that. And it doesn't rely. Eventually you're going to fatigue, but the fatigue isn't localized necessarily in any particular muscle. It might, in fact, you've got a whole technique issue involved there, which probably makes that a very unsafe thing to do. That's a big criticism of CrossFit. But so CrossFit is very different in bodybuilding in that it's so much cardiovascularly oriented. It's a lot of muscular tension as well, but you're just not focusing the limiter of fatigue on the muscle, which is the idea of bodybuilding. Versus CrossFit, and you're getting a much more cardiovascular kind of locus of fatigue. The thing that's as a total aside is like you look at the best CrossFitters and they look like bodybuilders, and that's because they're genetically gifted in the way that they're going to look like bodybuilders, and that helps them with CrossFit. That's not CrossFit hasn't brought them to that point. To some degree, CrossFit will make you look great. Yeah. Because people can gain muscle and lose body fat just from jogging. They go from sedentary and they start jogging. Yeah. That was demonstrated like in the 60s, like even in college age students, they would just start them on a jogging class for their PE course in college. Yeah. And they like literally the gains in fat-free mass and loss in fat. I've seen these studies. They're about the same compared to weight training and running. Yeah. Because you're going from nothing to doing something fairly stressful, and you're going to get some muscle growth out of that. So CrossFit is not going to make a lot of people, nearly as many people. I would love to see this. It's not going to happen probably. Let's look at 6 months of CrossFit versus 6 months of focused bodybuilding training. And the thing about CrossFit, which makes it work so well, is that people train really friggin' hard. Oh, yeah. They're challenged. They've got a challenge. It's friggin' beyond, it's like ridiculously challenging. That's kind of the whole thing is like, if you can handle this, then there's some badassery to that, without a doubt. I will not in any way, like God, back in the day, like even aerobics classes, there's a point in time when I'd go do aerobics class and I'd be like the only guy in there, and my buddies would laugh at me. I'm like, come on in, give this shit a shot. And this actually happened in college once. I was doing some, and they're having like the bottom of the rec center, and there was no air conditioning down there. Okay, and it was hot. Like this is in Nashville in like the spring, and I'm like, you guys, like, you think you're like, you guys played ball in high school? You guys are athletes. Come on down, give us a shot. And I was in decent shape. Yeah, I did like cybergenics in those summers when I was in college, so I was still training pretty hard, Yeah. You had to train hard, and these guys hadn't been doing shit but drinking beer. Right. And like they got decimated. One guy just from an aerobics class, because he was so hard, he literally just passed out in the middle of the class. He just lied there on the floor the entire time. It was hilarious. People were having to step over him and shit before he could drag himself away. Wow. So CrossFit has the advantage that it's so freaking hard. And that's just the culture of it. Yeah. Whereas you go into a lot of gyms like your average LA Fitness or big box gym, whatever it may be, most people are not training very hard. Yeah. But if you equate effort level, and so that you're training with bodybuilding as hard as or with CrossFit, and then the focus is on muscle as the locus of fatigue, muscle stress, as opposed to cardiovascular stress. Bodybuilding is going to make you into a more muscular individual. Yeah. And CrossFit's going to make you into a more cardiovascularly fit individual, and probably a more fit individual over all the domains of fitness. Yeah. Yeah, that makes sense. Agility and all those sorts of things. But as far as if you're going into CrossFit to look like a bodybuilder, and you're motivated to train as hard as you would in CrossFit, then bodybuilding is going to be your better choice. Otherwise, bodybuilders would have figured out CrossFit a long time ago, right? Yeah. So anyway, that aside from his question, but that's kind of part of the deal is why people don't go to failure on lunges. Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah. Okay, so we did have those couple of questions that were older ones. That we had the one on niacin, we had the one on milk thistle. We have some questions coming up in the feed as well. I know you had something, Scott. What do you want to go to? What are you thinking you want to go to next? We did have it looks like a training question in the feed if you want to go there. Oh yeah, let's do that. All right. So this is from since we're on training, we'll stay there for right now because we have some other stuff, GH and stuff like that. This is from George White. He says, just back weight training after 4 months of bans 2 times a week. Weights have not dropped on anything. Is this really possible to Is it really possible to maintain on bans alone? It sounds like he has. It sounds like he's answered his own question. George, no, it's not possible. I think you're full of shit. Like, he's obviously lying.
Yeah. It's an illusion. You think that you've maintained. It's all going to fall apart at your next workout. No, it's not.
Yeah. No. But hold on here. This is George has been training, he's as old as dirt.
Oh, I don't know how I feel about
but
that.
I am too. Like, we're probably both about to know. George is an advanced dude. Like, he competed a couple of years ago and was chest. You can go on Muscular Development. He's a post on there a good bit. Great guy, actually. Really funny. He's a Brit. And he's absolutely shredded.
Peeled, dude. Peeled.
Literally, like, totally peeled. Like, skinless.
Yeah.
So he's been training for so long. And I tell you what, I guarantee, just because he's, you got to have screws loose to have been doing this as long as he has. He, sorry, I'm going back to read his question.
That's all right.
The audio popped back in, but
yeah, he trained
hard.
Yeah.
He trained hard. There's no doubt about it. And he probably was doing similar movements. You could potentially lose some.
Yeah.
But the thing that I don't know how George seems like he's a pretty relaxed guy, so I think this might apply to him.
Okay.
And I saw this in a lot of people, not so much lately, but especially at the initial part of the pandemic when everyone sort of had to like go back home and they couldn't work. Like, people started making nice gains.
Yeah.
Because their stress was so less.
Yeah. I made a lot of progress with the shutdown. I really did.
Yeah.
I did train a little bit less too. I think that I lowered my frequency a little bit. I think that I had better recovery because I wasn't feeling like, well, I want to go to the gym, so I'll go. It's like when I worked out, I really worked out. And then when I took time off, I really took time off. So,
right.
But yeah, I made progress. He added in, he said, reps down from 12 to 9, etc. So he still has the same strength, just a few less reps, which that'll be back like next week, right?
And I would bet with George too, when he diets down, maybe if he's watching live, he can chime in on this, but he probably doesn't lose a lot of strength when he diets either.
Yeah.
Compared to off season. I mean, within probably 10%.
Yeah.
So, and like from 12 to 9, that's about a 10% different in max strength if you extrapolate that out with the refs max kind of test.
Okay.
So yeah, it totally makes sense. I didn't lose anything. A lot of people were making. I've got a client he's still training at home.
Yeah.
And but he's unlimited equipment. He's doing a lot of deads and a lot of squats.
Yeah.
And we're back on like really focused check-ins, but for a while they were somewhat intermittent. Yeah. And he's probably watching this. He'll know I'm talking about him. But he posted his pictures to me. I'm like, what the hell did you do to transform your back?
Yeah.
Like, his back came up ridiculously, and it was just he didn't have any other choices but to use barbell, like rows and deads and that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
His back grew, and he's not loving the pandemic and being, shut in at home.
Right.
But
his back is.
His back is, absolutely. All that matters. It's not how you look, but it's how you feel, and you look marvelous, as does your back.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's totally possible.
Yeah.
Well, I think a lot of people, they just kind of, they were using it's an interesting like test what's done to the mindset of many people with the pandemic. A lot of people have gained a lot of weight. They've gotten really kind of depressed.
Yeah.
So I think it's largely a function of introversion versus extroversion.
The freshman 15? I'm trying to get this to catch on, the COVID 15.
Oh, it's so true, though.
Is that a thing? Yeah, I think it should be. We should call it the COVID 15.
Absolutely. Oh, like COVID-19, maybe the COVID-19.
Yeah,
maybe that, because it's been a lot. I've seen some pretty radical increases in changes in body composition, which would be nice about it, but it hasn't been pretty for a lot of people.
Yeah.
You have another one?
Yeah, we have a bunch of them. Like I said, we do have some drug stuff going on here. A couple quickies here. I will say, so Dylan Jaworkian asked predictions for North Americans and for the Tampa Pro. I will say that I know that we are going to do a Tampa Pro wrap-up. Jeff Roberts and I, and maybe some other people are going to jump in. So we are going to do a whole show on that after the fact. And he also said, any advice is Radio Fortitude training collab shirts coming. That would be fun. Let me see what else we do have here, though, question-wise, though. Okay, I'm going to go back up to this growth hormone question. So this is from Walter. He's a longtime listener of the shows.
And Pro, Walter Hardman, yep.
he's getting ready for North Americans right now.
Oh, I thought he got his pro card. Okay.
Not yet. He's working on it though.
All right.
He says, I know Dr. Scott will know this. Exogenous GH. Let's see. Has to be exogenous. Does it suffer from carbohydrate stunting as far as lipolysis goes? Keep getting different responses from top level coaches. Only endogenous GH suffers from carbohydrates ingestion, not exogenous. Is there any truth to that? So he's talking about the fat loss benefits of growth hormone. If you eat carbs, will it reduce those benefits?
So, yeah, what he's talking about, there's two aspects of this. There's the endogenous regulation of growth hormone versus insulin, like the endogenous endocrine responses to a meal.
Yeah.
And so growth hormone's released when, and we just talked about this on Victor Black's podcast a little bit, but growth hormone during growth and development is about growth of the body. You know, if you're lacking in growth hormone, you'll be a pituitary dwarf, as they say. Mm-hmm. And the somatomedin hypothesis is that growth hormone stimulates IGF-1 release from the liver, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And when people have reached their full height, they're mature adults, so to speak, growth hormone will be released largely for fuel homeostasis. So if you become hypoglycemic, low blood sugar, this will trigger growth hormone release so that you can mobilize fat for fuel. The body needs to get the fuel somewhere. When you go to sleep, you'll tend to get that as well. Typically, people aren't eating during their sleep, although bodybuilders, mow down huge meals, so that will tend to increase growth hormone release.
Yeah.
So growth hormone is about lipolysis and managing fuel. If you do prolonged exercise without any intra-workout or endurance exercise, growth hormone levels will gradually increase over the course of the exercise.
Yes.
That's to help liberate the lipolysis, the fatty acids, so that you can then oxidize those. So when you eat a meal, eat some carbohydrates, you stimulate insulin release. Insulin inhibits lipolysis, and actin turns on lipogenesis. That's the opposite of growth hormone. The elevation in glucose is also going to suppress growth hormone release. So that's just normal endogenous regulation. It doesn't make any sense to release a hormone that is counter to another hormone at the same time. Like it'd be just kind of silly to have growth hormone stay elevated while insulin is elevated.
Yeah,
because you're trying to use the insulin is there for depositing those carbohydrates where they're needed in skeletal muscle if lacking glycogen, or if there's excess a little bit into fat, you don't get a whole lot of de novo lipogenesis until you've really been mowing down for a while. But insulin is a storage hormone, and in this sense, just put it simply, growth hormone does the opposite. It's a release hormone. It's releasing those stored energy sources in terms of fat.
Yeah.
So if you inject endogenous growth hormone, that's going to it's going to cause an elevation that peaks about 3 hours after the injection. It's around for maybe 8 hours or so. And there'll be some residual effects on metabolism after blood levels of growth hormone have gone down. But that's there. That's happening. That's going to impact lipolysis during that period, no matter what, because it's being forced into the system through the injection.
Yeah.
So that injection site doesn't function like a little pituitary in your brain that is regulated by fuel availability. So all the things that would turn on growth hormone release from your pituitary when you eat or when you haven't eaten or when you become hypoglycemic, those things aren't affecting the release of the growth hormone from the injection site where you put it in IM or sub-Q. That's going to just happen no matter what.
Yeah. And
that's going to be a function of blood flow to those tissues, whether it's sub-Q or IM, probably the growth hormone formulation. I've seen different papers looking at the area under the curve, sub-Q versus IM, and it doesn't seem to be universally better one way or the other. But that's going to happen no matter what. But if you eat carbs, you're still going to get some insulin release. And that's still going to, at the let's say the level of the muscle cell, cause glucose disposal and glucose uptake. At the level of the fat cell, it's going to inhibit lipolysis and promote lipogenesis. So if you eat like a fatty, like a mixed macronutrient meal, like you go and have a pizza.
Yeah.
So we'll break it down to like real world situation. You've injected growth hormone and you go and have a pizza, and you get a nice insulin release because the pizza's yummy. It's fatty. It's got protein. It's got carbs. It's delicious. You get insulin release. Look at any of those fat cells. You're going to have growth hormone promoting lipolysis, the fat breakdown, and you're going to have insulin inhibiting lipolysis and promoting lipogenesis.
Sounds confusing. There's a lot going on in the cell right now.
Well, it's just one cell. We got two hormones that do the opposite things.
Right. So what happens then?
So, well, it's a function of all sorts of things, actually. The size of the muscle cell, the extent of the insulin release, where the growth hormone is.
Oh.
If you did it like right afterwards, if it's at 5 hours later, wouldn't be nearly, the growth hormone would have nearly the effect as if it were like 3 hours, let's say 7 hours later versus 3 hours later when it's peaking.
Yeah, okay.
But those two things are going to be antagonistic in their actions on fat metabolism in the fat cells. And you're going to have the insulin release that's going to happen because of the meal. It might be modified to some degree because the growth hormone is going to impact blood fatty acid levels a little and change that a little bit differently than just the meal by itself. That's kind of a minor detail. The main thing is the fact that the growth hormone is going to be there counteracting that effect of insulin. Insulin is going to increase glucose disposal. Growth hormone generally has the opposite effect.
Yeah.
So the growth hormone that you've injected is going to it's counter-regulatory to the insulin. And it's going to, because it's injected, it's going to do its thing no matter what, and insulin's going to do its thing no matter what.
Yeah. So
you're going to shift, let's say at the fat cell, the balance of lipolysis and lipogenesis. So let's say it's not going to work out this way, except, very specific circumstance, but let's say that for one particular fat cell, the impact of insulin inhibiting lipolysis is exactly counteracted by the impact of growth hormone stimulating lipolysis.
Yeah.
So lipolysis is a tie there.
Yeah.
It's a moot. And that's because the growth hormone came in, because you injected it. Now, if someone hadn't injected the growth hormone levels wouldn't even be at play here. They'd be low because blood sugar's gone up.
Right. So
now you're going to have a net effect on lipogenesis, inhibiting lipolysis because of the insulin. So the difference there is the fact, essentially, that the body is regulating all of those hormones of fuel metabolism and homeostasis in concert.
Yeah.
It doesn't just like willy-nilly, like, let's just let them all fly and see what the hell happens.
Yeah.
It doesn't. They're counter-regulatory. So glucagon and insulin are also counter-regulatory in a way. Glucagon stimulates, for instance, hepatic glycogenolysis, so you can elevate blood sugar. So when glucose is gone, release glucagon. That's the way I remember it. So it's glucagon to the rescue, glucose goes up, whereas insulin has the opposite effect, which people know if they've injected too much insulin inadvertently. So those things are all coordinated, but once you've got the injection in there, the growth hormone is going to come up and come down. It's not going to be impacted. Probably one thing that might happen is insulin tends to increase blood flow to skeletal muscle. So if you've injected in the muscle the growth hormone, the insulin might have an effect of increasing the rate at which it leaves the site. So that's gonna change the pharmacokinetics a little bit.
Really? Okay.
Time to peak. Yeah, potentially.
Yeah.
You could do the same thing just by like exercising that muscle or putting a heat pad on it too.
Oh, okay.
No. Yeah. So, so there's going to be some little some minor impact of the growth hormone on how insulin acts, and a minor impact of the insulin on how the growth hormone acts.
Yeah.
It's pharmacokinetics, at least, not the dynamics so much, but but those are really immaterial. Like that's when why people say you just inject. It doesn't matter. Like all this like timing of like we're gonna do the growth hormone, the insulin 15 minutes later, and then do your carbs and all that kind of shit. There's nothing like that probably doesn't matter for Jack. But if you think it does, it will, because the placebo effect will come into play.
Yeah.
So it can matter. Like if you have like that's the thing. You have this. If you have the more exacting the protocol.
Yeah.
The more specific it is, like it must be between 12 and 15 minutes, not earlier, not later.
Right.
Otherwise, you're fucked. Like, your growth hormone is useless unless you use it right in this particular sequence. You've seen all those like protocols that people have.
Oh yeah, yeah.
And they get like they're different shakes. Those are the pre-workout, the intra, and the post-workout shake. And it's like, why don't you get it in the gut? It's all getting sloshed up around anyway.
Yeah.
There was a guy. He was actually a very, very smart kid, but he was totally outside the box thinker.
Mm-hmm.
He used to do weird shit just to like yank people's chains.
Yeah.
And he used to say he used to take all of his food in elementary school and he mix it all together.
Okay.
And eat it like that.
Okay.
And they're like, "Why do you do that?" It's like, it doesn't matter. It's all getting mixed in your stomach anyway.
Yeah.
It's like, because it tastes like shit. It's like, I don't care. But he was right. Like, once you get it in there, it's all the same. So, if you like timing of insulin and growth hormone with those very specific schedules is probably just doing nothing but producing an expectancy and a placebo effect, which can be very powerful. But physiologically, I doubt. When it comes to the growth hormone secretagogues, that's a different story. Another topic, because there can be an impact there on, for instance, glucose levels will reduce the growth hormone secretion that you get from those secretagogues.
Okay.
Insulin, not so much, but glucose does. So that's why people would use them when fasted.
And I think that's where we start to get like it gets a little murky for people, because then people start thinking that all growth hormone, basically growth hormone period is going to be affected by glucose. That the peptides are, then they think the growth hormone is too, and
right. And that's the peptides are working with the endogenous system of release.
Yeah.
So you've got the ghrelin analogs, and that's involved with the gastrointestinal system, which is going to be sensing what kind of fuel is coming in, and then you've got the GRPs, the growth hormone releasing hormone analogs, so the GRP 139 or whatever it is. Like, so those both can have a synergistic effect, but you have to pay attention, because basically you're sending in two inputs for growth hormone release to get it to come out of the pituitary. The pituitary is also picking up on things like the glucose level too.
Oh, yeah.
So like you can have if you have that glucose elevated, which is inhibitory stimulus for growth hormone release, and you send in the secretagogues to stimulate it, you can basically undo the effect of the secretagogues. Yeah. Because you're inhibiting with glucose. So that's why those become a pain in the butt, like trying to make sure that your glucose levels aren't elevated from a previous meal. Yeah. If you use those, but when you're injecting growth hormone, it's going in. It's going to go in no matter what, pretty much. Yeah. So it's there.
So if you were to use exogenous growth while blood sugar levels were high, it's still going to work. Now, I'm trying to look into this now further. I'm trying to ask. So, no matter what, you're going to get an effect from it. Sometimes those effects could kind of cancel itself out. If you were in a position where you're also storing, you're going to be burning and storing, and I guess what I'm getting at is I'm wondering, is there still going to be a benefit then to use exogenous growth hormone with fasted cardio to increase lipolysis?
So I'm glad you fasted. I was going to just go there. This is very analogous to using fasted cardio. So let's say you wake up in the morning and you do your cardio fasted and you expend 500 calories. Okay. There is absolutely no doubt, if you use indirect calorimetry, you measure, fatty acid oxidation, blah, 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 that without any food coming in, you're post-absorptive, you do that morning fasted cardio, you're going to oxidize more fat. It's a function of fuel availability and lingering effects of it. So insulin levels can be back down, and you'll have lingering effects on fuel use that can last for hours. So anyway, the fasted cardio definitely going to burn more fat during that period. So, but if your total expenditure for that day is 3,000 calories and you eat 3,500 calories, just because you did fasted cardio in the morning doesn't mean you're going to lose fat.
So I can't eat the pizza and do fasted cardio and expect to break even or keep progressing. No. Okay.
No, and
I'll note that to myself.
The thing that I suspect, which may be at least one reason why the fasted cardio is something that people like, and well, there's a few things, but it sets up a good pattern for the day.
Yeah,
the
it
first
does.
thing you've done is you've gotten yourself set into that rhythm.
Yep.
But also, you're training your metabolic machinery to use fat as a fuel. And so then there is a little bit of data showing this, that you, like, if you're there's all sorts of like low fat, like fat adaptation studies where they've taken endurance athletes and try to fat adapt them, which does happen.
Yeah.
And you get an elevation in the hormones involved with beta oxidation, fat utilization. So there might be something to say with making yourself better able to oxidize fats during your diet. If you can do that, maybe you have, I mean, this is just pure speculation, but maybe you have less carb cravings because you're just better able to use fats.
Yeah.
So you don't like there's like this, seems like this like magical point where people are taking like 100 grams of carbs a day, where they just like, it's like a suffering point. If you go lower than that, then you make a shift, you tend to become ketogenic.
Yeah.
But if you're like 100 to 200, you're kind of like teetering back and forth, because the carbs are just enough to shift you to carb utilization. Then you have to have the metabolic flexibility to go back to fats.
Yeah.
And that can like make people go bonkers and make them want to binge. So either you go higher carb and lower fat and keep a deficit, or you go below the 100 to 200 range, depending on the person's size. So some of that is having that metabolic flexibility. If you've gotten up in the morning and trained when you're fasted, you may be able to oxidize more fat overall, just in generally, because you're training the system for fat utilization, and it may make you less likely to binge. So if you use, the same thing goes for yohimbine too. People say you got to use yohimbine, when you're fasted. And there's one reason for that is yohimbine's action to block alpha 2s can end up potentiating insulin release, which is something you don't want to have, because that is going to inhibit lipolysis. So that's why people say do your fasted cardio with yohimbine, only use it when you're fasted. But still, same thing. If you're expending 3,000, eating 3,500, you're still you're gonna end up with the caloric excess. You're not gonna lose fat. So if you inject growth hormone and you do it, and you don't eat any carbs around that time, you're gonna have a greater fat utilization. It's just how it's gonna work. But you still have the first and foremost is caloric balance for fat loss.
Okay.
So you can play with all the timing as much as you want, and I think there probably are some there. I mean, I think nutrient timing definitely has its utility, but if you think that you're going to get some magical effect and turn yourself into some ridiculous, you're going to like shift your genetics in a way that you now are like just naturally shredded because you're doing all these things to provoke lipolysis. Inject growth hormone, fasted cardio, yohimbine. I think it can have a little bit of a subtle change, but you're still not going to be able to get away with eating a caloric excess and expect to lose body fat.
Yeah, that makes sense.
So I think that kind of answered your question.
Yeah.
And the thing that people conflate and they confuse is that what you're doing during a given period of time in terms of fat use, specifically during cardio, supersedes caloric balance overall. So you may have that morning cardio when you're using, 70 or 80% of your fuel comes from fat because you've been dieting with a low fat diet and you haven't taken any carbs in for a while. Maybe you haven't had carbs for several days in substantial amounts.
Yeah.
And so you're burning a shitload of fat. But, and Atkins used to say this. I heard an old radio interview with him. It's like, you can eat as much as you want and you'll lose weight as long as you don't have any carbs. 10,000 calories. It's like, no, it's not going to happen.
Yeah.
You're not going to violate the laws of thermodynamics like that. But I think you can shift your body's ability to use fats to a certain degree.
Yeah, that would make sense.
Definitely in your favor.
Yeah.
So that's the thing with, taking and using growth hormone when you're fasted. You will get more fat mobilization.
Okay.
And I thought I had found a paper, and Lord help me, I cannot find the fucking thing again. But the thing that'd be interesting to see is if there is some interaction between carbohydrate and insulin and growth hormone in a way that the carbohydrates and the insulin, taking in those carbohydrate containing meals, substantially dampens and interferes with exogenous growth hormones' impact on lipolysis, such that it just dramatically outweighs it. And I don't know, I have no reason to suspect this would necessarily be in any way that's makes any practical difference.
Okay.
But I think people kind of think that, like, if you have some carbs with it and all of a sudden, boom, like those lipolytic effects, like insulin is not blocking the growth hormone receptor, for instance.
Yeah.
It's not like the insulin gets in there, like, and all of a sudden, boom, just like insulin isn't blocking the alpha-2 adrenoreceptors or it's not activating them, whereas yohimbine is inhibiting them. Yeah. It's not getting in way with the effects of yohimbine on the fat cell, just like it's not doing the same thing for growth hormone.
Yeah.
So there's no like interaction there that just ridiculously and abundantly blocks growth hormone's lipolytic action in a way that just makes it worthless.
I think that's important to know. That's important. That's important stuff too. Then.
So.
Okay, we had a couple more things here. Not sure where we went. What's that? These
are great.
Yeah, we have a couple more that came in on the feed. Then we had those other questions. I'm not sure where we want to go with this one. He looks like he's a younger guy, Simon, and he says, what are your guys' opinions on the most safe AAS cycle to run long term? So is there, first of all, are there going to be
looking here
safer steroids than others? This is probably up toward the top. This is maybe like the fifth comment down from a little while ago.
This is Simon Niemer. Yeah. So he has another post. I found this here.
Okay.
This I know, but from my standpoint, is something like
he was talking. People were talking with him. People were making suggestions to him, and so he was responding to them.
Yeah. Yep. Ooh, that's so slick when you pull those up like that. You've got his profile picture up. I dig it.
Yes.
So safety is going to be a function of a whole bunch of things.
Okay.
Overall dose, and it always has to be relativized towards your goals. Like the safest cycle is to not cycle.
Sure.
Unless maybe you're hypogonadal and you need to use testosterone as replacement, which can have benefits. But this is again, it's a context is everything for a lot of these questions. So like the question is then like, let's say he wants to become the most massive, like monstrous bodybuilding that his bodybuilder's genetics would possibly allow.
Yeah. Then what's the safest cycle to look like Branch Warren is going to be a different answer than, what's the safest cycle to look like a Calvin Klein model?
Absolutely, for sure. And then the other question is, what is he willing to do as far as food and training on top of that? Is he want to rely on the cycle? Like, is he going to like kind of train ho hum? Does he not want to eat eat the whole? Doesn't want to eat like Jordan Peters has, or like many people have. He doesn't have a big. It's just like I'm just gonna eat like a moderate. So
we'll just play the opposite side of that. I mean, does it really matter what he eats? I mean, at the end of the day, yes, that does change his results, but and obviously you could, I guess, get a lot more out of less. But are you saying then, like, if you don't want to train as hard, then you'd have to take more to get an effect? Okay.
Right. That's the thing. Like, for goal X, whatever that might be. Classic physique or men's. What's the men's bikini division called?
Men's physique division.
Men's physique. Yeah.
Hey, those guys are badasses now.
The pros are ridiculous. Those guys, they're actually getting them too big now. Like, they're that good.
I like them. They look freaking nasty up there, man. They look good.
They're like, and I've been, I competed at a show that was a pro-am and got to see some of those guys. It's like, holy shit, how do they fucking weigh that much? I mean,
they're unreal, man.
I've seen that. And then, of course, the Tampa Pro, which is coming up this weekend, they walk them down through the audience. I'm not sure how they'll do it now with COVID, but and they're like, holy shit, these guys are just badass. They're just not going to be able to be IFBB pros, but they're ridiculous physique. So I just couldn't. It wouldn't pop. I wanted to say men's physique. I'm like, is that right? Yes. All the new divisions, they confuse this old brain of mine. So, but for goal X, whatever it may be, the safest cycle you can use is going to be a function of what you're willing to do otherwise.
Yeah.
So that question really is it's unanswerable without knowing where he wants to take his physique. And what's the safe, like it's asking, like, what's the safest drug for someone who has a headache? And if someone has a family history of liver disease, of gastrointestinal disorders, like you can cause all sorts of gastric issues taking a lot of aspirin. But my grandmother, on the other hand, she used to take 100 aspirin a week for her rheumatoid arthritis. Never had a GI problem at all.
Wow.
Zilch, and she lived to be like 97.
Okay.
So it wasn't so that for her, aspirin was great.
Yeah.
Other people, a couple aspirin, and they're like, they're just horrible. They've got, get a bleeding ulcer.
Yeah.
So it's all going to depend on your genetic proclivity, where you're trying to go. And the first thing I would say is, like, what are you doing otherwise to try to get where have you maxed out everything? And then the other question is going to be looking at you, and we've talked about this before when we had Latz on. He talked about the guy, I think he was from Russia, he's Eastern Bloc. Oh yeah. Who had gone through and figured out for himself the minimal doses that he was, or the maximal doses he was willing to sort of tolerate as far as side effects for each of the drugs that he was going to use. And then he put those out in combinations at those levels, working up to them. So it may be that, for him, let's just say take like one that's sort of known as the worst. He has no family history of Alzheimer's. He has no psychotic tendencies in his family or otherwise. He's a great sleeper, and he doesn't get any negative side effects from using trenbolone. Okay. Pays attention to this. Trenbolone actually is not a bad one for him. He might be able to get away with like 10 milligrams of Tren 3 times a week. Wow. And great effect.
10?
Yeah, 10. Yes. How much? What's daily output of testosterone in a male?
Whatever, 7, right? Something like that.
10 milligrams. Yeah. Tren's more anabolic and androgenic than testosterone.
Yeah.
So it's a possibility that he could get all he needs out of just that. That's a very small amount.
Yeah.
Obviously, you're like 10. Like, what the fuck?
Yeah, 10. Yeah, exactly.
Right.
10 every hour.
He's going to have a dose response in terms of growth and in terms of each of the various side effects.
Yeah.
For each different drug. So it's hard to kind of say. Like, obviously, testosterone is the one that's endogenously produced. And for instance, people have it takes different amounts to get different blood levels of testosterone. Some of that's, for instance, a function of the phosphodiesterase enzyme that cleaves the esterified fatty acid from the testosterone located in the liver. You have the good isoform of that, genetically speaking, then you get like a 60% higher area under the curve, a 200 milligram testosterone injection.
Yeah.
So the cycle amount is going to vary depending on that, how his body handles the drug, as well as the sensitivity of his androgen receptor. And the sensitivity is going to probably vary a couple different places in the gene where it can vary substantially for the different drugs. So he might find that, he doesn't have any like estrogenic side effects from D-bol, from wherever they may come. And testosterone is great. He can do, I talked to someone the other day who he was getting like his blood levels for they're like 3 times what you would have expected given the amount of testosterone he was using.
Yeah.
How the hell? But he probably had a lot of things in his favor for whatever reason. So, and the estrogenic side effect, like for some people trying to do 500 milligrams of test, might, in order to keep estrogen under control, might require levels of an aromatase inhibitor that just fucks up his joints and his lipids to just beyond what he wants to deal with. He's got a family history of arthritis. He's got bad joints because of something else he did. So I can go on and on. Like literally, you can pick every friggin' compound and look at it from that perspective. Yeah. So, and I ramble intentionally when asked these questions like that to point out that, not like in a mean way, but it's an overly simplistic view to try to get that best cycle.
Yeah.
And really, that's a starting place. Like testosterone, test is best. What people always say, testosterone is the endogenously produced hormone. It's funny because people say hormones, but trenbolone is not a hormone. I don't know that trenbolone is produced endogenously. There might be some, like, you can. I don't believe trenbolone. Anadrol is not a hormone, right? Nandrolone. I think there's some nandrolone that can be produced in the body, I believe.
Yeah.
Very, 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 very small amounts. But most of these things are they're anabolic androgenic steroids that have the cholesterol backbone that's shared by testosterone and the other steroid hormones in the body, but they're not really hormones.
Yeah.
So there's good reason that you might think testosterone's the best one to go with. So a simple testosterone cycle, you look back at the 1996 study by Bhasin, Bhasin, where they gave men 600 milligrams, I think it was, a week, college-age men, and literally they didn't know if they were on or not. They couldn't tell. There was no increase. They did like some sort of an index of aggressive tendencies, aggressive mentality, aggressive behavior. Didn't change that. And they had a group that trained, a group that didn't train, and they had two other groups that trained. They had groups that trained and didn't train. They had four groups, and they had with or without steroids. Okay. The group that took the gear gained just about as much muscle mass, cross-sectional area, and fat-free mass as the group that trained without gear. And if you trained and used gear, you got double growth.
Yeah.
That was just like a 12-week study, something like that.
Okay.
And that's a pretty safe cycle. If college-age guys are making gains when their testosterone levels were pretty high, then that's a good one. They couldn't tell they're on. They weren't getting aggressive. They weren't turning into assholes. Yeah. That's a winner, I think, in my book.
Oh, I want to address one part of his question too. He said, long term. So, I don't know what long term means, but you mentioned dose being a really big part of side effects. I think duration can be a big part of side effects too, and I've seen it, just firsthand that you have once you start and this has been a big thing this season because I had a number of people who were planning to compete in early shows, which were then canceled or postponed. And, you can extend someone's diet, but in my experience, once you start them on a compound on a lot of compounds, really in a cutting phase, that you have a shelf life. Like once we start, we can diet for 6 months, we can add food back in, we can extend that, we can just get leaner and maybe come in fuller. But once you start the trend, once you start the Masteron, once you start the Winstrol, you're on a clock. You can stop taking it, but you're not going to be able to continue to use it. The longer we can use Winstrol, for instance, for everybody's different, but for a period of time before joint issues start creeping up on people. And I'm not saying everyone across the board, but that's just been my experience. So I think that duration is also a factor in any steroid, and that I don't know what he means by long term, but long term, you're going to need to you can't continue this stuff long term. Any of them, in my opinion, you stay on them long enough and that there will be problems.
So he might refer, if he goes to my Instagram, there was, I did a podcast with Victor Black last week, and he calls it his superhuman man or superhuman protocol. And he's got a very solid idea that he's been employing with clients for quite a while. And as a long-term solution, so to speak, and it's hard to know, what exactly this might. People are probably going to vary as the extent to which this might reduce life expectancy or increase the risk for disease. But he uses small amounts of testosterone, small amounts of growth hormone. He uses an angiotensin receptor blocker, telmisartan, which to help keep blood pressure under check. Small amounts of insulin, I think just on training days or peri-workout, infrequently, not like a constant, let's use a long-acting all the time, to kind of relieve the potential stress on the pancreas of high caloric intake.
Yeah.
So he uses several pharmaceuticals in combination at amounts that are going to have a good benefit to risk ratio. So we're not talking about 1,000 milligrams of test a week, or any no orals whatsoever, but just smaller amounts in combination of the basics that he has found that are beneficial and that work,
Yeah.
and uses them in combination. And we also talked about the idea of rotating on and off some of those as well. And that's what made me sort of think of that idea when you're talking about this. So let's say that you're going to choose, let's say, you find that DECA and EQ are, roughly equivalent for you for whatever reason. And you don't have like you don't get anxiety from low levels of DECA or low levels of EQ. You don't get elevated hematocrit from that. And someone might find that they would use testosterone at 300 milligrams a week and alternate between like a nandrolone phenylpropionate and an EQ, something like that. 4 weeks on, 4 weeks off, then 4 weeks on the next one, 4 weeks off. And then during those 4 weeks off of the nandrolone or EQ, they would use insulin during those periods. So then they would be alternating insulin, 4 weeks on, 4 weeks off. So you're minimizing the side effects by rotating through those hormones. And this is something too. It's probably the same detoxification system in the liver, the same enzyme, P450 CYP enzyme that's involved with most steroids. As far as I can tell, I've not been able to find any differences there. But the metabolites that you get are different. Like the nandrolone metabolites will hang around for like over a year.
Yeah.
So those can have some interesting effects. So coming on and off of those things is going to change metabolites. It's going to change the toxicity that your body has to deal with. So you're releasing at least whatever specific toxicities or whatever toxicities are specific to those drugs in particular by coming on and off of them and using some sort of a baseline form of testosterone. So basically what you're kind of saying here, and what I think Victor kind of employs, you can listen to the podcast for more details there, is that the idea is that you don't get on a particular regimen if you're trying to do that and just stay on continuously, because you're right, then you have this duration, you have an accumulation effect. Let's say it's hematocrit. Keeps on going up and up and up and up and up. But let's say that someone finds that, and I've seen there's actually some literature about using tren as an HRT. There's at least one paper I think I have in my database here where that's been proposed, and there was a physician in Phoenix, I think, who was doing that. But very, very small amounts. So let's say that testosterone tends to cause hematocrit issues for this person. They might bloodlet, they might take care of those things otherwise, but maybe they can do 300 milligrams for 2 months before they start to get an elevation of testosterone or in hematocrit. They come off of that, and then they go with something else, some other combination. They do a PCT, let's say, or they decide that they want to use tren. I'm not saying use tren.
Right.
And remember, I said 10 milligrams, so we're not talking like you don't swap 200 milligrams for 200 milligrams in this kind of scenario we're talking about.
Right.
But they find some way to limit both the drugs themselves that cause the side effects, as well as limit the duration of those drugs when those side effects are more time sensitive or duration sensitive. So you come off the stuff when you get to the period of time where it starts to have an accumulated side effect impact on you.
Yeah, that makes sense. It does.
So that's nothing specific. You're not going to get like do this, do that, do this, that, because that doesn't.
Primo.
It's like
all primo.
People love Primo, especially in the UK. It's expensive as shit, but it's like what's the best exercise for my chest?
Yeah, right.
What's the best diet for me?
Yeah.
I don't know. What's the best drug regime for me?
Yeah.
It's all individual.
All right. So we have enough time for maybe like one more here, and I know that we had a couple of old questions that we hadn't covered. One of them, what do you think, niacin or milk thistle? Which one do you want to tackle?
That was kind of let me see here. Let's look at this question. Thoughts on niacin. So niacin does, I haven't looked into the niacin. I presume the idea is, can you ask Scott his thoughts on niacin? That's my favorite way of phrasing a question, as Scott knows. Just tell me your thoughts on it. Yeah.
Thoughts on niacin.
Yeah. Well, it can elevate HDL, but I haven't seen any, at least convincing evidence that doing so has an impact on cardiovascular risk as a way, in the same way that you see if you look cross-sectionally at people. Having low HDL is not in your favor generally as a predictive risk factor for cardiovascular disease or stroke and those sorts of things. But I haven't seen data that suggests that if you, maybe there's something out, I haven't looked in a year or so probably, but that suggests that if you elevate your HDL, at least in the way it's customarily measured, that then gives you that protective effect that you see when you look cross-sectionally.
That's what I've heard too still. And I don't know, I haven't looked into it further, but that's what I've heard, that doesn't change mortality rates by increasing HDL through niacin.
Yeah. Niacin or nicotinic acid actually inhibits lipolysis.
Does it really?
They will use that, lots of research studies
I never knew that.
To invest. Yeah, it's pretty cool. It's a really powerful effect. They'll use it to literally blunt lipolysis.
No kidding.
So they can just eliminate that as a fatty acid liberation from fat cells as a potential fuel source. So what you see during exercise is an increased glycogen use. So like someone literally who's like taking like as much niacin as they can handle and not get like the nasty niacin flush like right before they go to work out.
Yeah.
I'm not sure what the half-life niacin is, but if you could end up using more glycogen than you would otherwise want to and end up really flat.
No kidding.
That essentially, that's just totally theoretical. I've never experienced that, nor have I tried to do that. But like we used to use niacin, like to try to help get vascularity and a pump going backstage.
Okay, yeah.
It was the thing. I tried it and never got anything but just red.
Yeah.
All it did was just like change the color of my skin. I never got vascular from it.
Yeah.
I just got a flush and felt like shit.
Yeah.
So, but if you're literally, I could see someone. If it would be possible that you would like try to get, if you're one of those people, some people do this, I think they get nervous, they just keep on pumping up. Either that or they're holding a bunch of water, they're trying to sweat it out in some way, shape, or form.
Right.
But if you go and like just keep on pumping up and you're taking niacin to get vascularity going, you could literally just deplete all the glycogen you have left and end up flat as shit on stage.
Right, absolutely.
Niacin would be like shooting yourself in the foot. So that's a little tidbit on niacin. And then milk thistle. Silymarin is the active ingredient in psilocybin or psilocybin. It's an antioxidant, anti-inflammatory, anti-cancer effect. That's the standard liver herb for liver health. Helps with hepatitis and liver cirrhosis, alcoholic liver cirrhosis, like liver scarring from people who have just been alcoholics all the time. So it definitely has clinical effects. That's why people take it for when they take orals. So. Like most of the ingredients you find in liver formulae, it has an antioxidant effect. Yeah. Glutathione, like people would do like the glutathione infusions and those sorts of things to really jack up antioxidant status. Too much of that, of course, can potentially blunt adaptation to exercise.
I've heard this.
Yeah, we've covered this before, I think.
I think we had. And it'll like we talked about it, I think, in relation to NAC.
Yeah, NAC does it. Vitamin E and vitamin C in combination do it. Like any type of like mega dosing of vitamins. Yeah. And you'll basically quench the oxidative stress, and that's part of the stimulus for turning on muscle growth.
Okay. Yeah.
And I mean, gosh, you can even you'll blunt mitochondrial biogenesis.
What does that mean?
People go out making more mitochondria, so your muscle cells get more aerobically inclined. Okay. Ability to oxidize fuel with oxygen.
Gotcha.
So, like, take people when you start them on a jogging program, or whatever, and like just keep mega dosing them with vitamin C and vitamin E. Yeah. And they won't get the mitochondria. That's the most like basic adaptation exercise is more. It doesn't happen. Wow. You blunt it that way. Huh. Yeah. It totally. So it's that hormesis thing. Like you have to have some amount of stress. The optimal amount of stress gives the optimal adaptation. Yeah. Too much, it's not good. But if you blunt it, the anti-inflammatories do a little bit of the same thing. But if you blunt the free radicals, you basically stop the adaptation in its tracks.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, it's kind of so like take your antioxidants outside of the window of before and after, probably a couple hours before it, probably more than that, try to take them as completely opposite in the day from your training times if you want to get good adaptations from your training. Yeah. So don't take your milk thistle like right before you train.
All right. All right, Scott. Well, we're about out of time then in this case. I know we had some more stuff we wanted to do. Maybe we could save that for the next episode. And I was going to ask you a little bit about your thoughts on me and my current deloading situation, but I think we'll have to wait on both of those, and I'll have to
All right.
I'll have to try to work on that on my own. I think I've got it.
Well, we don't have to do it on air, Scott. You can always just call me and we'll chat on dog walk or whatever.
All right, I appreciate it. So and appreciate everybody here who's taking part here. We had some really good questions today. Are you training today, Scott? Are you already training? What do you have going on?
Today's an off day for training. I was gonna help someone move some stuff around, but I think I'm working on all those projects that we chatted about.
You got a lot going on
top
too.
Secret,
yes.
Top secret projects. I get ready the Tampa Pros this weekend, as you know.
Oh yeah.
So, and my mom is coming down back to Florida just for a few planned. That's for her birthday, which is a couple weeks from now. But
okay.
And I had no idea it was when the Tampa Pro was. So I'm like, so I'm going to stay like through Saturday morning, and then I'm going to drive right down. So I'm going to pack early and get ready.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah. I still don't know how they're going to do it with the shows you've been going to. Have they been like limiting the audience?
The shows I went to one show, and there was no limit to the audience, but it was small. It was in a tent, so there was not a lot of people that showed up. Yeah,
in a tent.
It was fun. We had like a picnic tent. I shot a video of it. It was the Michigan State Championships. I'll send you a link to that on Facebook. It was fun. We had a good time.
They couldn't get a venue, I guess. It was probably illegal.
Yeah. We couldn't have an indoor venue. We almost moved the Michigan State Championships to Ohio. So that we could hold it, and then we ended up having it in a tent, and it worked out really well. And it was a beautiful day. Weather was perfect, nice little breeze, and a nice sunny day. So it was good. Yeah.
You know, I saw Ken's. I'll just mention this, and maybe Ken will see this, but I saw Ken's his post with his injury and all that crazy. That just sucks. But I'm thinking like if 225 or 250 was like supposed to be kind of a max number that he mentioned for gatherings. Is that the number you know anything about? But
I don't know anything about it there.
The way they're doing the master, like all of Gary shows up there, he's spreading them out over like 4 days.
Oh, okay.
So here's the thing, though. I'm thinking like Gary's a smart guy. He's going to make shit happen, you know.
Yeah.
One way or another, and he hasn't canceled anything. But let's say it's just 1,000. We'll make it easy. You got 1,000 competitors on a given day.
Yeah.
That's 1,000 competitors for the entire show, all the divisions.
Yeah.
More than that, but even if it's twice that. So you got 500 that are going to compete on every day. You bring them through in waves.
Yeah.
You know, like you come in, like if you're, bikini this class, A's and B's, you show up at 9. After you're done, you leave. You don't hang out back in the posing room or whatever. Like you get the heck out of there.
Yeah.
And if it's 500, you got them spread out over 4 hours, something like that. You never have more than like 100, 150 people together at one time.
Yeah.
If you limit the audience.
Right.
So you just make it online, pay-per-view, whatever. But you can easily do that. Even the shows are gigantic, but if you got over 4 days now, so I think you can still do those shows.
And I do suggest, I know they are doing a pay-per-view for the Tampa Pro, so I do suggest if you guys are fans of bodybuilding, I don't know what it costs, but if it's like $20-25 or something, this is a great way for you to take part and watch and support bodybuilding too. So be worth checking out.
Yeah, we got to keep this going so we have the Olympia.
Yeah.
Hopefully.
Yes.
Still.
Yes.
Yeah. Invest.
Yes.
$25 is nothing.
Yeah, I don't know. I made that number up. So, like I said, if it's $25 or something, then it's worth it.
Well,
so
if it's 50, then you owe me 25 because that's all I'm paying. You already,
well, you're going to hopefully be there. You'll hopefully be there live.
Yeah.
So
if I can, like if they're already bought out because of the limits, whatever.
Scott's going to hold his phone up, and then he's going to send that stream to me. You guys can pay $10 to watch the Tampa Pro off of Scott's phone, and then you don't have to.
I'm gonna get a selfie cap, and I'm just gonna like stick my phone on there. I'm not holding that shit up for like an hour. I'm just gonna stick it there. Yeah. Selfie cam. Yeah.
There you go.
And just do it that way.
There you go, guys. Go to fortitudetraining.net. You can check out byobbcoach.com. We'll have links to Scott's book from the Amazon with our affiliate code. We also have, of course, our sponsor, TrueNutrition.com. Our code advices. We have the Amazon and GetAzoth.com for Azoth, and links for all that along with codes, guys. So, guys, thanks for watching another live feed with Dr. Scott Stevenson. This is Muscle Minds. I'm Scott McNally. See you guys.
Thanks for the question, guys. Appreciate it.